If you're like me, then you're probably thinking that Ange Postecoglou has been a breath of fresh air in the Premier League. Not just for his entertaining press conferences,
I'm 57 years old, mate.
but also for his style of play. Spurs have tried trusted names, and it's time for something different. And every manager that goes on to be a great needs to be given a chance to do so at some point. Barcelona allowed their B team manager to take over, and he went on to be one of the greatest minds in football history. Arsenal took a chance on a French manager who was working in Japan. Manchester United brought in a manager who made the Scottish League look easy. Whoa, before you write that, no, I don't bring up these examples to say whether Ange will or won't be better, let alone as good as any of these managers in the Premier League. This is just to illustrate that everyone who was great or is great needed to be given a chance to be as such. Anyone who succeeds needs to be given a chance to do so. Ange is a smooth operator in press conferences, he's stubborn as a mule with his approach, and that's what's brought him success from Australia to Japan and Scotland, sticking to his philosophies, sticking to what he believes in and what has worked for him throughout his career. As Ange himself has said, every job he has taken on at the club level has been an overhaul, and he's been successful with almost every one of them. Spurs are a club that could use an overhaul as well. This is where Ange Postecoglou came from and how he has beaten the odds and his detractors everywhere he's gone. Now, I'm sure when you first read his name, whether that be when he was a player, when he was a young manager, or when he finally made his way to Europe, there's a good chance that you read it twice. So before I see any debates in the comments, Ange, tell him.
Ange Postecoglou.
So, Ange was born in a suburb of Athens called Nea Philadelphia. Go ahead, you can get me on the pronunciation of that one. But as his father wanted to secure a better future for his family, they ended up moving to Melbourne when Ange was 5 years old. The suburb of Prahran had plenty of Greek immigrants in it, and as Ange has told it, a fixture of the community was to go to the park every weekend, play or watch football, eat some souvlaki, and in his dad's case, finally get to speak with his mother tongue. Ange idolized his father and his work ethic, which saw him leave before sunrise and return at sundown. And that was instilled in him. And he was an incredibly hard man, according to Ange. He was difficult to please, bordering on impossible to please, really.
When I walk out, my old man's next to me. He's a hard man, my old man.
I mean, he sounds like the kind of guy who, no matter what you did, create a habitat on Mars, find a cure for cancer that is accessible to all, solve the hunger crisis and global warming. It sounds like his dad would give you a nod and let you know how you could have done it better or more efficiently. This kind of environment can cause some to wilt and others to thrive, and Postecoglou has thrived thanks to this. But it wasn't just this work ethic, but the football ideals that Postecoglou's father passed on to his son, Ange. Ange has always said that he wants to play football that his father would be proud of, and a big part of that are these 4 words: keep the ball down. And while he has stuck by those words as a coach, with his teams playing liquid attacking football rather than hoofing it forward, he lived them as a player as well. So Ange Postecoglou joined South Melbourne when he was just 12 years old, the same team that he would often watch alongside his father on the weekends. You know, when we were talking about souvlaki in the park, yeah, you got it. Playing as a left back, he won his first title in 1984 with South Melbourne Hellas. They dropped the Hellas part of the name eventually, by the way, and Ange even went on to captain the side. Now, at this time, football wasn't professional yet in Australia. It was still considered amateur prior to the league evolving into what is the modern day A-League. However, despite the technically amateur status of the league, there was still enough of a draw to bring in none other than legendary player Ferenc Puskas as their manager in 1989. Given Puskas had managed for a few years in Greece, Postecoglou actually ended up being not just his captain, but also would interpret for the manager, as well as sometimes moonlight as his driver. Now, as we mentioned, Postecoglou's father is a massive influence on both his values and his footballing philosophy, but Puskas will have played his own role in Postecoglou's approach as a manager as well, including his attacking 4-3-3 formation, though Puskas didn't play with inverted fullbacks, of course, not at that time. But anyway, as Postecoglou put it, quote, anyone would say his teams just wanted to outscore the opposition. That's all he wanted to do. He goes, we will win 5-4 every week and I'll enjoy it. I was a defender, so we copped 4 goals and I was like, shit, but he was buzzing because what a game. They scored great goals, we scored great goals. That's just not right. But it was right because what it did was, for us as players, it released us of that fear of, oh, we've just conceded a goal, what a tragedy. It became, oh, we've conceded a goal, let's go up and score two. It doesn't matter, it's all right. He provided that security blanket. We ended up being champions that year. Under Puskas, Postecoglou won his second title with South Melbourne, as well as a cup. But due to injury issues, Postecoglou was forced into retirement at the age of 27. But he didn't stay away for long. He would go on to be the head coach of South Melbourne in under 3 years. As the head coach of South Melbourne, Postecoglou began to put his outlook on football, shaped by both the influence of his father and Puskas, into practice tactically. He became the head coach in 1996, and by the 97-98 season, they were champions again for the first time since Puskas led them to victory. The following season, they defended their title and were also crowned champions of Oceania, meaning they got the chance to go to the Club World Cup, where South Melbourne held their own, but ultimately fell to Sir Alex Ferguson's treble-winning Manchester United 2-0. Postecoglou flirted with the Australian national team job on a few occasions, but having fallen short of the senior job during the interview process, Postecoglou was handed the keys to the youth teams. While he did well for them, with Australia changing from the Oceania Confederation to the Asian Confederation, Australia was suddenly faced with said challenge when it came to qualifying for tournaments. Unfortunately for a young Postecoglou, he failed to guide Australia to the U20 World Cup. Now, this is where Postecoglou's career felt like it was up in the air. As a result of the failure to qualify, Postecoglou was interviewed by Craig Foster, who essentially argued to Postecoglou that he should be replaced due to his failure with the U20s. It got pretty heated. Take a look.
Well, it says a lot about our football.
I don't sit in glass houses,
our
mate. I'm
standards.
out there.
Well, mate, listen, what I'm saying is, if I didn't qualify the team twice, like...
His reputation had certainly taken a hit from the failure to qualify, and the on-air fight with Foster didn't make him the most desirable hire, even though he had won back-to-back titles with South Melbourne and guided them to the Club World Cup. So, after 7 years of coaching Australian national youth teams, Postecoglou landed in an unexpected location. He left Greece when he was 5 years old, and when Postecoglou was 43, he returned there to manage a football club. In the Greek 3rd division? What? Yes, Postecoglou took on Panathinaiki, a 3rd division club that boasts a rich history. He brought with him an assistant and fellow Australian, Peter Klamovsky, who told the Scotland Herald that everywhere Ange goes, he enjoys having a project where he builds. He refers to Ange as a builder of teams, often taking no issue in dispatching of players who may not fit his philosophy or who may have too much influence over the rest of the squad, in order for Postecoglou to be able to build the entire squad up better. That's exactly what Postecoglou did at Panathinaiki, taking them all the way to just 1 point off of the top spot. And with the 2nd division in their grasp, he quit. Due to internal unrest at the club thanks to a change in ownership and some controversial changes that sparked fan protests even, Postecoglou and his staff left the Greek club despite being on the verge of something great. Postecoglou leaving clubs when things are going well has been a common occurrence and will be a common occurrence, as he is so married to his values and how he wants to run things that he'd rather walk away than concede on his own vision. Some may say it's best to be able to bend rather than break, but you have to admire his commitment to his own vision. So, Postecoglou returned to Australia and managed an amateur side in Melbourne before finally he made his return to the top flight and now professional football in Australia via the Brisbane Roar. Of course, given how he had left his home country and gone on to coach a 3rd division club and then an amateur club in Melbourne, there were more detractors and doubters than there were supporters of Postecoglou amongst the media at the time. Now, you should keep in mind that the A-League is a salary-capped league, and the reason for this is to assure that there is parity. Not parity, we're talking parity. The cap is there to ensure that things are relatively equal and that no club can buy their way to success and therefore domination over the rest of the league. That's the intent, anyway. And so with these restrictions on squads, those who get creative with their recruitment and who have the best tactics will likely come out on top. Thankfully for Brisbane, they hired the perfect man for the job when you consider those two parameters for success. And of course, Postecoglou would go on to make Brisbane champions for 2 seasons in a row, and again, in a league with a salary cap, he managed to take them on a 36-match unbeaten run, which is a wild feat. And given they played a possession-based attacking style of football, the Roar were often referred to as Roarcelona. One of his players from his time with Brisbane, a midfielder named Tommy Orr, said of Postecoglou, quote, quote, "Ange is head and shoulders above the managers I worked with. He's similar to Jurgen Klopp. Every player wants to win for him." And when they did. But remember how I said he has a knack for leaving when things are going great? As if he has an unquenchable thirst for constantly challenging himself. He left the Brisbane Roar for somewhat of a homecoming, as he joined Melbourne Victory. Like his former assistant coach said, Postecoglou is a builder, and he did the same thing he always does upon joining Melbourne. Out with the old, in with the new, giving 8 players their marching orders, including Harry Kewell, and replacing them with some, perhaps, less fanciful names, you know? He didn't win the A-League title in his first season, but considering the clear out and how he left back-to-back champions Brisbane, the fact that he managed to still finish higher than Brisbane was quite admirable. And after one season, he left the club in the hands of his assistant Kevin Muscat, who would go on to build off of Postecoglou's foundations and find success. With the sacking of the Australian national team's manager, Postecoglou was brought in to right the ship, but he did so by, of course, making some big calls as far as player personnel, telling team captain Lucas Neal and legendary keeper Mark Schwarzer that they would be dropped from the team. Postecoglou would go on to be a solid manager for Australia, winning the Asian Cup in 2015 thanks to a goal from James Troisi in extra time. This was a huge achievement for him, but as Postecoglou tells it, his dad was still relatively unfazed by the victory.
Well, here's the Asian Cup medal, Dad. He goes, "Well done, son, but if you'd made a substitution a little bit earlier and you stopped this playing out from the back shit, you wouldn't have gone into extra time and you'd be fine."
Well, perhaps his father wasn't all that impressed. Australia were still playing brave, attacking football, as evidenced from their 2017 Confederations Cup performances as well, where they drew Cameroon and finalists Chile before losing just 3-2 to Germany. However, while the spirit of Puskas and his father was felt in the team, trying to outscore opponents rather than focus on defensive solidity for the most part, Postecoglou's detractors began to point to how Australia struggled to qualify for the 2018 World Cup because of Ange's attacking style, in their opinion. While they did indeed qualify, after months of arguing in the media, debates on television, and constant criticisms from both the public and supporters, Postecoglou quit his post as the national team manager in November of 2017, 1 week after winning the Intercontinental Playoff over Honduras and 7 months prior to the 2018 World Cup. From there, he went on to Japan, where once again he and his style of football was a success. After a poor start to the season, he helped Yokohama Marinos FC put distance between themselves and the relegation places that they were flirting with, eventually landing in 12th and competing in the J-League Cup final, of which they lost, but still. However, Postecoglou would make good on the belief he had from the Yokohama board, as in his second season, he helped them to their first J-League title in 15 years. From here, you probably are already aware of where things went for Postecoglou. After winning the title with Yokohama Marinos, he once again left while the going was good. But can you blame him? The Celtic job was available, and they were interested in Big Ange, and so he joined up with the Scottish side that was having a tough time dealing with Rangers at that moment. One thing that Celtic will have liked hearing from Postecoglou, beyond his successes, beyond this clear and unwavering identity in playing attacking football, was his man management and how he can get a tune out of any player so long as they buy into his own bravery. Postecoglou once said to Japanese football journalist Sean Carroll, quote, "More than about technical ability, it's about have they got the guts? Can they do it with no fear? Even if we make mistakes, will they keep doing it?" That's key, the will they keep doing it. Key for anyone who wants to improve at something, as you can't quit and revert to type after a single mistake, especially if you're playing under someone like Postecoglou, who has been happily married to his footballing philosophy for ages now. And with the success he's had, can you blame him? Postecoglou brought with him 6 Japanese players to Scotland, of which they were quite integral to his success in the country, while he also cleared out any player who perhaps didn't have the guts to play in his system. Another rebuild, another squad overhaul, and even more success in the face of sometimes overdone skepticism, which is nothing new for Postecoglou. He's used to this. The clear out of the squad and the influx of signings, again 6 from Japan, will have been a bit shocking for Celtic supporters. They had a manager they likely won't have heard of prior to his signing. He was signed from Japan, and he brought some trusted soldiers with him, and this was the guy who was supposed to knock Rangers down a peg once again and claim control of the country? Well, of course he did just that, once again winning back-to-back titles. He loves a back-to-back title stint, doesn't he? as well as taking the Scottish Cup in his second season and also winning 2 Scottish League Cups. Dominance. His attitude in press conferences, how he dealt with the players, where he sourced said players from, and of course, how he brought success, quickly made him an absolute favorite amongst Celtic supporters. Through his time in Greece and Japan, and even while he was still back in Australia, Postecoglou showed that he doesn't really care where a player is coming from. One of such players, Thomas Broich, was proof of that in Australia. Perhaps not the sexiest of signings at a time when A-League was getting close to bringing the likes of Alessandro Del Piero to the country, but so long as you had some of the raw components that Postecoglou wanted from you, you didn't need to be an all-rounder. You just needed to have those aforementioned guts to stick to his plan, and the plan will take care of the rest. Broich himself said to The Athletic, quote, "By far the best footballing brain I've ever met in the business. It's insane, his understanding of the game. When you play football his way, it's really tough at the beginning, but it becomes so easy. You're always one step ahead of your opposition. He knows exactly where you should be for every pass. It wasn't robotic. Decisions were always up to us, but the structure, patterns, and movements he created were always very clear, made a lot of sense to us." Due to his meticulous planning and automations that he has ingrained in his players' brains, so long as they have the guts to stick to the plan and not revert to a safe option when a mistake is made, keep the ball down, have guts, and stick to the plan. But on top of that, he wanted players to take risks, as a former player, Tommy Orr, told The Athletic. He used to say all the time during games, if in doubt, go forward, play positively. He wants you to feel free and unrestricted. If in doubt, go forward, and if it doesn't work out, I'll back you. He said that all the time. And he doubled down on that actually, as so long as a player was taking a risk and going forward or within the parameters of the game plan, Postecoglou would back them, saying that the person who makes the mistake should also be backed up by his teammates, not punished for being brave, just as Puskas took the shackles off of Postecoglou and his teammates while playing for South Melbourne. For all of these reasons, as well as being the most successful Australian manager of all time, it's easy to see why Postecoglou has been able to climb the ranks of football rather quickly in the last few years. He's no spring chicken, as he himself said.
People are going to come in and freshen things up with a new idea. I'm 57 years old, mate.
However, his mix of fluid attacking football tactics, sticking to his principles, ensuring his players play with guts and with the utmost respect for the shirt that they're wearing, as well in his belief that there are players around the world who aren't given a fair shake due to where they come from, but can absolutely do far more than an adequate job. When you mix all of this together and then sprinkle in his sense of humor that somehow manages to be light while also brutally honest, you can understand why Postecoglou already has the hearts of plenty of neutrals. And with his track record of bringing success to almost every club he has managed, well, I'm confident in saying that Spurs have brought in the right man for the job. Well, so long as Levy allows him to cook. That's always the asterisk when you're speaking of a manager's prospects at Spurs. But anyways, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this and learned something about Ange Postecoglou, because I will certainly be following him very closely. I have high hopes for him. So I hope, that word hope once again, that he's able to shine and prove his doubters wrong. Other than that, thanks for watching. As you can see, I'm still not at home due to this family emergency, but I will be back soon, probably. Thanks for the support and understanding with the break and uploads. It's really appreciated. I'm Adrian, and take care of yourself, all right? Ciao.